You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
You may not be able to handle the truth, but these guys can. Welcome to the Long for Truth Show.
Heretic hunters.
Hey, what do you think of these guys?
I think they're damned and on their way to hell, and I don't think there's any redemption for them. You stink, frankly. That's the way I think about it.
Hello and welcome to the Long for Truth Show. My name is Dan Long, and today we're going to be talking about wimpy Christianity on the Long for Truth Show. I am on a website, and actually an article. I'm on the Christian Post website, and I'm looking at an article by Andy Stanley that I came across this morning on Facebook. The title of the article is Andy Stanley, Christians Are Now the Minority, Must Adapt Approach to Sharing the Gospel. Now, this is taken from the 2013, the Drive 2013 conference, which was hosted over a 3-day period and had about 2,400 pastors and church leaders from about 25 different countries. And so I'm reading this article, right? And the more I read it, the more frustrated I'm getting with it. Now, I'm not a big Andy Stanley fan anyway, especially since what happened last year with the whole situation in his church where he had, he had two couples or a gay couple that wanted to serve in his church, and because the one gay man in the marriage was not divorced, he wouldn't let him serve. But he didn't even deal with the issue of homosexuality whatsoever. And as far as to my knowledge, he has never really clarified his stance on homosexuality. But anyway, so I'm reading this article. The more I read it, the more I'm getting frustrated with it. And there's a couple of reasons why. The first reason is the idea that we have to adapt our methods in the way we share the gospel in order to reach an, quote, unchurched culture. So that was frustrating. And as I'm reading it, there seems to be, at least as I'm reading it, and you read the article yourself. Check the article out for yourself on the Christian Post. The article was dated yesterday, the 20th, so it's a brand new article. You can go on the ChristianPost.com news/Andy Stanley, and you'll find it. And you can read the article yourself. But at least it seemed to me that there were some underlying tones here in this article. It seems that the reason that Andy Stanley and other seeker-friendly pastors like Andy Stanley want to adapt their methods in reaching out to the unchurched and kind of, and he says in the article not to change the message, but just the method. And I'm going to read the article in a moment. But the underlying tone, at least in my opinion, is if we don't change our methods, we're going to lose people. Our churches aren't going to grow. Now, he says here that his whole idea is to reach people for Christ. Andy Stanley told attendees assembled from around the world and the hundreds watching online that if they are trying to reach unchurched people, they must be willing to challenge traditional assumptions and adjust their methodology without changing the content of the message. So I'm reading this and I'm thinking, what in the world does he mean by that? Anyway, let me just go on and let's see if he explains it. And this is a quote from him. For many years, evangelicals have been able to speak from a position of authority because we were the majority, but we are no longer a majority, so we can no longer speak with the same authority. And that's the end of the quote. So, in this little quote that he says that Christians, evangelicals, at least I would assume that's what he means, evangelicals anyway, have been the majority? Where in the world does he get that idea? Now, maybe the evangelicalism as a whole, I don't know, but I know this: genuine Christianity, genuine Christians are always in the minority. Always. Maybe their idea, the seeker-friendly pastors and other evangelicals like Andy Stanley, maybe their idea of Christianity or evangelicals have been in the majority, because so many of these seeker-friendly churches have been, sitting under pastors who water down the gospel. They water down the gospel, and they do this so that they can keep the people coming in. They try to make their church services relevant by, opening up the services with AC/DC's Highway to Hell. I wonder who did that. Or trying to be as worldly and cool and relevant as they can, such as, say Judah Smith, maybe singing Celine Dion as he's on stage at the Hillsong Youth Conference. Try to be relevant and trying to be cool to try to reach, quote-unquote, the unchurched. But, doing that, maybe. But even then they look like fools. They look stupid and foolish, because people can get entertainment outside of the church. They don't need the church for entertainment. All they got to do is jump on their televisions or their computers or their iPads or go to a rock concert. They don't need the church for that. That's just absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, maybe that's what he means by evangelicals being the majority. But genuine Christianity, genuine Christians, have always been the minority. Why? Because the genuine gospel exposes sin by preaching the law. You preach the law, you expose sin. Those who are not called by God are not going to hear the message. They're going to reject it. They are going to mock you, and they want nothing to do with you. Those whom God is calling, as the law is revealed through the preaching of the gospel, they're convicted of their sin, and they're saved. And even those who are not called, the reason why they reject the gospel is because the law does reveal to them that they are sinners, and they don't want to hear that. And so if you want to say that, most of evangelicals have been able to speak from a position of authority because, evangelicals have been the majority. If you mean evangelicals in the sense that the mainstream, where the gospel's been watered down so much, then okay, maybe I could agree with that. But genuine Christianity genuine Christians have always been in the minority. And that's because the gospel offends. And it's supposed to offend. The cross of Christ is an offensive thing to people. But anyway, I digress. So let me keep going on with the article. Let me read a statement again. For many years, evangelicals have been able to speak from a position of authority because we were the majority, but we are no longer a majority since we can no longer speak with the same authority, he said. Here's another quote. But the good thing for us is that a precedent was set for us in the first century when Christians were in the minority. Now, what did he mean by that? Well, listen to how he explains it. This is what he says. Jesus predicted that we would take the message to every nation and tribe and tongue, and we became a majority world religion he continued. Now, first of all, he says here Jesus predicted that we would take the message to every nation, tribe, and tongue, and then we would become a majority world religion. That is so ridiculous. Jesus never said anything about Christianity becoming a majority world religion. Nothing like that whatsoever was said by Jesus Christ to his disciples. Now, he said the gospel must be preached to every nation before his return, but that's not. He wasn't saying that he wasn't saying Christianity will become a majority world religion as you preach the gospel. So that in and of itself is a false statement. I mean, didn't Jesus say that those who followed him would be persecuted, handed over to the authorities, even handed over to the authorities by their own family members, like sons handing over fathers to their to the authorities because of the father's Christian beliefs? I mean, that is such an Americanized way to think about Christianity. It's just ridiculous, and it really doesn't even take into consideration all of the persecuted Christians all over the world. It's just really silliness. Stanley's concern is that unless church and evangelicals in particular change their approach in communicating with unchurched people, followers of Christ will lose their voice and forfeit opportunities to share the gospel in a culture that desperately needs a Savior. Now listen, this is where I began to think, okay, wait a minute now. There seems to be some underlying tones here in this article, because what is our jobs? What is our role as Christians? We are to be salt and light where God has placed us. Every Christian has the responsibility to be salt and light where they are at. If you are called into the ministry, then that's where you are to be salt and light, but not just there in your church. You're also to be salt and light in your community as well. If you are a truck driver, you're to be salt and light there. If you're if you work in a restaurant, you're to be salt and light. It doesn't matter where God has placed you in life. You're to be salt and light. People are going to come into your life, and God is going to give you opportunities to share the gospel with people. That is what we are to do. And so, to change our approach in communicating with unchurched people, is he speaking of pastors here? Because he says followers of Christ will lose their voice and forfeit opportunities to share the gospel. That is not going to happen. That is not. We may lose our voice in the public realm. We may get, persecuted in the sense that we are not allowed to speak out publicly as often, like we're doing here on the podcast or YouTube or, in any other social media. But as far as being in our society, as far as being a part of our culture, it doesn't matter whether or not we're allowed to do it. We are to speak. We're to tell the people that God has placed us in relationships with. We're to tell them that Jesus Christ died to pay the penalty for sinners. We're to give them the gospel. So it does not mean that we're going to lose opportunities to speak to people about Christ if we don't change our methods. That just isn't going to happen. It may get harder, but we're not going to lose our voice and forfeit opportunities to share the gospel in our culture. That just isn't going to happen. Now, my idea, or at least my thoughts on this, is that unless pastors of megachurches don't change their methods in presenting the gospel to folks, that they're going to lose people. If they present a biblical gospel message, pastors and seeker-friendly churches are going to lose people. Because God does not have a wonderful plan for your life. That's not the purpose of the gospel. You hear that so often when you listen to messages, sermons. If you